When I was growing up, I was taught in American history books that Africa had no history, and neither did I. That I was a savage, about whom the less said the better, who had been saved by Europe and brought to America. And of course, I believed it. I didn't have much choice. Those are the only books there were.
Hey boys and girls, it's Mr. Bryant again, and today I have a special story for you. But before we begin the story, think about your family and how important your family is. Well, my family and my ancestors to me are very important, and I wrote this book today and illustrated this book in honor of my ancestors who sacrificed so that I could stand on their shoulders today. It's called Everett and Rodney.
Come on, horsey, pick up your heels. We gotta get these books to the plantation.
Come on, Rodney. It's hard to see in this rain. We gotta get out of here.
Everett and Rodney, illustrated and written by Daniel L. Bryant. This is a story about slave children in the Deep South and their pursuit for an education as a gain for freedom. During slavery, many of the slave owners were fearful of slave uprisings, so they prevented the slaves from learning how to read and write. Many of the slaves knew very little of their ages or even where they were born. It was the wish of many masters to keep their slaves ignorant. Once upon a time, there were twin brothers named Everett and Rodney. Both were born slaves on a plantation in the South in 1853. 4 days after their birth, the boy's father was killed for trying to learn how to read. The boys later lost their mother to a tragic slave revolt when they were just 5 years old. The boys never remember seeing their mom by the light of day. Their mother would lie with them and get them to sleep, but long before they awoke, she was gone. Everett and Rodney hardly had a chance to communicate with their mother due to the hard labor of slavery. After their mother's death, the boys became the property of the Smith family, the owners of the plantation where they lived. A plantation was a large farm which cotton, tobacco, coffee, and sugarcane was grown. Life on the plantation was extremely hard for all the slaves. The slaves worked from sunup to sundown. Some of the slave children had to work alongside their parents. As for Rodney and Everett, they had the privilege of helping the Smith family run errands to different parts of the town instead of working in the fields. The Smith family had a son about the same age as Everett and Rodney. His name was Gilbert. Everett and Rodney would watch Gilbert and the other white children their age go off to school every day. This made Everett and Rodney extremely angry because they desired the opportunity to learn reading and writing just like the other white children. When the boys learned how their father died, they were determined to learn how to read. One day after lunch, Everett and Rodney gathered all the slave boys together and organized a plan to learn how to read and write. In order to receive the opportunity to learn, the boys had to figure out a way to get to the schoolhouse as well as get some textbooks. Everett and Rodney also made a teacher out of Gilbert, frequently asking him about the lessons he learned. In return, the boys would give Gilbert pecans, which he loved to eat. Some of the slave children ran errands, took care of the animals in the barn, worked around the house, and carried water and food to the fields to the sharecroppers. Everett and Rodney had every slave boy to work harder and faster in their job in order to finish sooner, giving them time to visit the schoolhouse. The plan worked perfectly. Every boy finished their work early and gathered together in the barn near the plantation for their lesson. Everett and Rodney received permission from Mr. Smith to clean the schoolhouse grounds. Everett took this measure just in case anyone got suspicious of them being around the schoolhouse. Rodney got special permission from Miss Smith to clean out the shelves located in the back of the schoolhouse. Old reading, writing, and arithmetic books were put on the shelves because they were old and torn apart. The boys were very excited to see their plan coming together. They wanted to tell their families, but they figured that if their parents knew about their plan, they would try to discourage them from doing it in fear that they would be caught. One day, as the boys were on their way to the schoolhouse, they were stopped by another slave owner and asked where they were going and why they were going there. The boys answered every question calmly and wisely as they were eventually left alone. The boys approached the schoolhouse and started to work outside. The schoolhouse windows were up due to the heavy humidity. The teacher was giving her lesson on the alphabet and vowel sounds. Rodney made his way into the classroom and was told to clean out the shelves along with a little slave boy named Fred Douglass. Fred was hated by the slave children as well as the freedmen's children because Fred's father was white. However, Rodney loved Fred like he loved Everett. Some of the students snickered at the boys because they didn't have the best of clothes. The boys were sweaty, dirty, and raggedy. The majority of the boys didn't even have shoes to put on their feet. As the students continued snickering and pointing fingers, the slave boys silently listened to the teacher as she taught. As the days went by, the slave boys continued to learn as they worked around the schoolhouse. At the push of every broom or rake, the boys heard the lesson not meant for their dark ears to hear and understood it. Everett grabbed a broom and began to brush the alphabet on the ground. He learned the entire alphabet while he worked around the schoolhouse. All the slave children were learning as they kept it safe in their hearts and minds. Rodney was told to burn all the old textbooks. However, the boys kept the books, but burned the junk found around the schoolhouse. Before they went to bed, Everett and Rodney gathered together the old textbooks, along with some wooden benches and a candle for reading light. The boys wrote and recited the entire alphabet. They even put words together using the old textbooks they acquired. Everett mastered the alphabet along with words, while Rodney learned how to draw them in the ground. Along with divine inspiration, the boys taught themselves how to read and write the alphabet. A young boy by the name of Benjamin astounded Everett and Rodney because he was able to build a clock completely from wood, without ever having seen one before. Benjamin's display of brilliance inspired the Quaker flour mill owner to lend Benjamin astronomy and math textbooks. Within weeks, he not only mastered their contents, but found mistakes in calculations made by the authors. Rodney and Everett instructed the rest of the slave children to begin meeting in the woods. The next day during lunchtime, all of the slave children, the boys as well as the girls, came to the woods for school. Everett and Rodney were their teachers, and they were excellent teachers. All of the children learned how to read and write their own names. The slave children had class every other day because the boys would learn the lesson while working around the school one day, and the next day they would teach the lesson to the rest of the slave children. As time progressed, all of the slave children on the plantation learned how to read, write, and do arithmetic. The children finally told their parents what they had been doing and were even able to teach them how to read as well as write their own names. The myth of the plantation was now broken. Negroes could learn. As the years passed, the generation of slave children used their education to purchase their freedom. As for Everett and Rodney, they both became superintendents over many colored schools around the South. Without the sacrifice and inspiration of their parents, without the sowing of their seeds, the two boys would not have been able to accomplish all that they achieved in life.
And that I am not a ward of America. I am not an object of missionary charity. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment, there is scarcely any hope for the American dream, because the people who are denied participation in it, by their very presence, will wreck it. And if that happens, it's a very grave moment for the West. Thank you.